you can introduce yourself and just say you're sitting with Maricopa today.
Hi folks, I am sitting with in Maricopa today, ready to do a candidate interview, share a little bit about myself so that you have more information in order to make a wise vote when you go to the polls. So my name is Nancy Smith. I'm currently serving as your vice mayor. That is an appointed position by the rest of the council. And I have been serving as a council member for 6 years. I had a first term, which was 2 years to replace someone who had resigned, and then a follow-up term of 4 years, which is about ready to expire at the end of December. I came to the city of Maricopa before it actually incorporated, and so my husband and I were here before any major shopping centers, before any major infrastructure. It was really an opportunity to get in on the ground floor. And ever since we came, we've been involved in various supporting groups, such as he and myself helped Pastor Rusty start his Community of Hope Church. 2 of my friends, Rusty Akers and Wendy Webb, co-founded the For Maricopa Food Bank. I used to help a lot with the Parks and Recreation Department in terms of putting on events. It's just been a real fun time. And so that's my background with the city of Maricopa until I became a council member. And my background work-wise is that for 35 years I worked for Motorola, which is an electronic government military program-based business. And I was in electronic technology, and I was also in program management. The program management aspect gave me a lot of information regarding how to actually operate as a city council member. And so it's been a great benefit, and Motorola was very, very good to me, and it's been a pleasure to work there. And now I'm retired. I retired from General Dynamics for 5 years. I worked there for 5 years after Motorola. And I'm retired, and I get to the opportunity to serve as your city council member as many hours a week as I possibly desire, which usually ends up being quite a few, but it's a lot of fun.
Well, welcome Nancy Smith to Meet the Candidates on Facebook Live.
Yeah, thank you.
You are the latest city council candidate to join us.
Yep.
And we thank you.
You're welcome.
Nancy, in a previous interview with In Maricopa, you told us that city council can be doing more for the youth of the city. To that end, you're working on an effort to bring the Boys and Girls Club
Yes.
to Maricopa?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you think that will help the youth of Maricopa?
Oh, most definitely. So the Boys and Girls Club of America is a great program in terms of they teach mentoring for youth in regards to various hazardous elements such as, drug abuse, how to stay out of trouble. They also educate on their education programs within the school. They have homework sessions. They do great outings. They have fun times for kids after school. It's just a great place for kids to come, the youth, and find positive ways, positive mentors to embrace their ideas with and to learn how to be an outstanding citizen for our communities. And so I'm looking forward to that program. I just had a conversation with them. They are still planning on coming, even with the COVID. But a lot depends on the school system, right? And how much the school is willing to still open to outside organizations. So they're working through that process. And they plan on opening their very first club in the Tortosa area. And so that will be a great accommodation for those youth that are out in that area who are always striving and seeking for something to do and positive reinforcement. So I think it'll be a really excellent program, and then they'll expand into other schools with other clubs as they can and as their bandwidth allows for. And so I think it'll be a really exciting opportunity for the city of Maricopa.
So you're hoping that may happen by the end of the year?
Oh yeah, they're supposed to open July when the first day of school opens.
Okay.
So what is that, July 23rd or something
yeah.
like that. So they're supposed to be there, and unless the school says no, we don't want to open it at this time because of COVID, but I don't think that's going to be a problem. I'm anticipating that's not going to be a problem because they currently are serving students of emergency folks, first responders in the city of Casa Grande And they've taken on all of the COVID-19 precautions and regulations, and they
Okay.
stay 6 feet apart. They
Yeah.
no groups larger than 10. So they're currently operating under that structure, and so I think they can convince the school system that they can handle the problem.
Okay. You also said that the arts community here should be promoted
Yes,
by the city
yes,
because you think it could help drive economic development,
absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
What can the city do, and what is the potential that's not being realized there?
Okay, so there's a lot of potential. I mean, I could answer that question in a lot of different ways. But first, let me tell you what the city is currently doing. We have a cultural and arts committee, and on this committee, they discuss what the city can do in regards to helping the arts within the city of Maricopa. And so some of the ideas are, if you've been in a city that has an iconic structure, such as a bull, such as a cow, such as a horse, you've seen those painted.
Mm-hmm.
The Arts Committee is currently looking at what is our iconic structure and how can we get that out to the artist world to design, and then how can we offer those to businesses to sponsor so that they can be placed throughout the city of Maricopa. And
Very
so
cool.
that's pretty cool, pretty exciting. I serve on that committee as the council liaison because I'm so into arts. I love arts, I love crafts, but I love how art can actually enhance the city. Another area that has, slightly been talked about, but as the Heritage District grows in terms of interest for businesses, it could become somewhat of one street or so, could become an art walk where you walk and you have various small businesses associated with art, and that's how it can enhance economic development. And then you also have the hearing arts, which is any of the choirs or the orchestras that we have. You also have those types of arts, which we have a magnificent orchestra. It's small. I want to say it's probably 30 people,
Okay.
but they do a marvelous job. And so providing locations for them to perform where the sound is great. And as you may know, we already have 2 locations that will become potentials. The old library, as it's moved out into the new library, the center section can become a use for community, but also a use for the arts, the sound and visual arts, to perform there. And I understand that they feel like they can fit 200 people in for a performance, I know, in that little section of the library. And then also the new library is going to have larger areas where you can do art performances. And so it could be a plethora of different things that are performed in these spaces, whether it be theatrical, musical, visual, a variety of different things. So I'm excited about that.
And how does it drive
Economic
business
development?
development or
Yeah,
economic
so basically, meaning that if you have a healthy art environment, people are going to come to your community to see the various art forms that you have. If you had one street that was basically art shops, not only are you bringing in the revenue from the sales at those shops, but you're also bringing people into the community because it's exciting for them to come down and see what's offered here. And then they purchase things at other stores, other restaurants. I mean, it's pretty exciting. They might stay in our new hotel once it's done.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
so it can drive economic development pretty well. It's a neat little sector to really invest in. And
Yeah.
I believe our city manager wants to do that. So I don't think that I'm up against anything really hard, except for finding the space, finding the time, finding the money, to help and promote those types of things. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. I wanted to ask you about the recent ethics complaint vote that came before City Council.
Sure.
On May 19th, you and 5 of your fellow council members voted to reject an ethics complaint filed against Councilmember Julia Gussie
Yes.
by in Maricopa owner Scott Bartle.
Yes.
Before you voted, you said you were most concerned about the revenue impact
Yes.
of Councilmember Gussie's actions
Yes.
on in Maricopa. The city invested at least $2,000 in multiple ads in the new resident guide publication that we do in 2017, 18, and again in this year, 2020. But last year, 2019, the city bought just one ad, and spent $1,000. So half or less than the previous years. Why does that not count as lost revenue?
Well, I guess you can call it as lost revenue, but it's not from the actions of Councilwoman Gussie. It is from the actions of the staff who have decided, they've taken a look over the last 3-4 years. What can we do to improve our marketing of our events, marketing of the information that we have to share, marketing of a variety of different things. And they felt that by hiring an information person that can do well with social media, that they are able to improve their marketing at different locations and possibly save money. And so it was a very defined and decided effort by the staff to change the way we were doing marketing. And thus we ended up hiring such a person, doing basically city reports that go out. You can sign up for a city newsletter, get the information there. You can go to City of Maricopa Facebook page, get information there. You can go to the Facebook page. You can go to a variety of different social medias and get the information. And they felt like they were getting more production there than spending money in medias. And there's a concern that the print media is possibly declining, and so they wanted to be on top of it in terms of other social medias. So you could classify it as a downgrade, but or a decrease in funding. But I believe wholeheartedly that it was not due to any action by Councilwoman Gussie.
Do you know why it went back up again this year?
Let's see. I think that, I guess I don't know the answer in regards to that. I'd have to do some research, and I don't mind doing that to help that question and answering it online if you'd like me to do that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
During the review of the ethics complaint, you spoke a lot about the flawed process and that the complainant was illegitimate.
That the what?
That the complaint was basically that the complaint was illegitimate because it was raised by somebody other than a fellow council member.
Okay. I alluded to that. I didn't specifically say that, but yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't want to.
That's okay.
Misconstrue
I don't want you to
feelings
put
on this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. But is it true that city staff could have abandoned the complaint before it even got to council?
So that's interesting, and I think it's important to discuss the fact that the conversation associated with that aspect of it, whether or not it should have come before council, is a matter of how you interpret the code. And that's all that message and that discussion was meant to talk about. It wasn't meant to talk about in the future only council members should bring complaints against council members. The code could be changed to encourage that or to allow for that. But it depends on your interpretation of the code as it exists today for this complaint.
Okay.
And when I read the code 3 times prior and then 1 time after to try and understand how I felt about the code and the way that it was written. And then I also talked to those who helped to write the code. And so given that information, the way that I interpret the code is that it was meant to be, the section starts off with council members must and should report any conflict of interest, any ethics violations that they see. And so that puts the responsibility on us as the council members. And then down below it talks about, I should have brought those words, but there are 2 words that it describes: the person making the complaint and the person who the complaint is against. And then one of the actions is that the person making the complaint needs to tell the person that they're filing the complaint against that they're going to do this. And I don't believe that Mr. Bartle called Councilwoman Gussie or wrote her an email and indicate I'm filing this. And so to me, that indicates that there's a relationship that's happening on a regular basis, and that a council member is going to tell another council member that I'm filing this ethics violation against you. That's how I read it, and the words to me indicate that. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't be changed in the future. In fact, we've talked about the fact that we are looking at changing the ethics code. And if you're going to ask me, do I think it needs to be changed to make sure that the public can have input, I am definitely open to that idea. What I'd like to do is do some research or have the city research other cities and other counties' ethics code and determine how best that's done so that it's not abused. I don't want it to be abused, but I do want the public to have input. So I'm interested in understanding exactly how that would happen and how we would change that. But the comments that were made that night were based on how the code reads today and how I interpret the code. But in the report, not in the report, basically I think that the indication is that it could be interpreted in different ways. Okay. And so because it could be interpreted in different ways, I was willing to allow it and make a decision on that violation.
If council was so convinced of the intent, why did the city attorney investigate? Why wasn't he just told that Mr. Bartle has no bearing,
right,
or no standing to file a complaint?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I followed up the very next day because I wanted to understand that as well. So I asked our lawyer, so why was this allowed to come forward? Why did you move forward with an investigation? And it was because of the interpretation and the ability that it could be seen either way, that it could be council member to council member or it could be third party to council member as well. And so because there was that vagueness, and because of the importance of impacting revenue stream, that's very important, something that we don't want happening. They decided because of the ambiguity and the importance of it that they would bring that forward. And so I think that's a great question, and I too wanted a specific answer, and that's the answer that I received.
Okay. Economic development has always been a very important issue for the city. Are you concerned that City Council is effectively condoning city government intrusion into private business affairs?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah,
I'm really glad that you asked that because it allows me to answer the question and talk a little bit about the specifics of the report. Because if you haven't taken the time to request the report and review it, you're probably confused. And I know that many of the people that were watching online ended up talking to me or emailing me or texting me and saying I was confused as well. And so part of my lesson learned, since this was the first ethics violation in 6 years that I've actually had to make a decision on, part of my lesson learned for anything that might happen in the future is to make sure, so I'm a council member who likes to pull things off of consent agenda. And what I mean by that is if something's in the consent agenda and I think it's important for the public to understand, so consent agenda just you vote yes or no on all the elements in the consent agenda and you move them along because they're simple, they're common, there's usually no questions, but once in a while something will end up on the consent agenda and I'll pull it off because I want it discussed. I want staff to come forward and talk about it. I want it discussed. And so one of my lessons learned on this ethics violation was that I should have followed the same practice that I enjoy doing for consent agenda for our residents and helping the listening folks understand what the comments were in the report, why I was voting the way I was voting. And in fact, it probably would have been helpful to walk down through each of the elements, although there were 10 counts. I think you could summarize those into 2 counts, basically the behavior and the decrease in revenue. And I think if you walk down through even just those 2 subjects, you would find out something that was in the report that's interesting and really made me think in advance of making my decision. And it addresses your question. And that is, do council members have the right to ask questions of businesses that are concerning to them? And so I read through the report. The report says, and this is important too, it says Councilwoman Gussie came dangerously close to the ethics violation, crossing the line. And so that's important for all of us as council members to understand, is to take a look at what she said, understanding that the way in which it was said came dangerously close to crossing the line. So that's important, and I think it would have been helpful to the public to understand that. But it's a lesson to all of us city council members and the mayor as well to understand that.
Yeah.
However, it did say that council members and mayor have more to do than just the budget and policy. And they have a right to look at what's happening to their residents, what's impacting their residents. And in this case, Councilwoman Gussie makes the statement that the hiring process might be impacting the public, is what her statement was.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to take a look at myself and say, have I ever done something similar to that, so that I can understand the practice and what that actually means. And so if you take, for example, City Council has had maybe 3 opportunities to talk to Global Water within the City Council meeting. And I've had many opportunities to talk either verbally or through email with Global Water in regards to their practices. And just as an example, at one of the council meeting interactions with Global Water, I was very assertive. I wanted to protect my residents. We had probably 50 or 60 residents who came forward, told stories, and then basically Ron Fleming got up to answer any questions. And I was very assertive, very pointed, and I said, listen, our residents are not feeling that your customer service is meeting their needs. Water bills in some cases go up $200 above the norm, $300 above the norm. They call you. They might be seniors. They might be vulnerable. They might be single moms who don't understand how to check what their water problem is.
Right.
And you're not helping. Your company is not helping. You need to help. And so I felt like that was kind of a similar incident to what Gussie was trying to indicate, that she was concerned for the safety of her residents. I'm concerned with Global Water for the safety of my residents in terms of their bills, in terms of other elements of Global Water. So I've had several interactions like that via phone, via email, on City Council. So I think it is my right, my duty to take care of my residents. And so I do so in a professional manner, even though it was challenging, even though it was assertive, you do so in a professional manner. And that's what I mean by I need to take account that there definitely is a professional manner in which to approach that. And I don't ever want to get close to the line. And hopefully I'm not somebody who acts in that behavior that gets close to the line. But yes, I do think that there are occasions when City Council might interact with a business in a fashion such as that. Another example might be the Apex business that came to town, which most people in town, most businesses in town wanted to support, wanted it to come, all of its ancillary elements that might come along with it down in the future.
Right.
And yet we had a attorney who used to be the state attorney general who comes to Maricopa out of Phoenix and basically says, you're not handling your zoning change correctly. Well, all right, buddy. I don't know who your customer is, but indirectly I was able to determine it's probably not the one he's alleging that it is,
Right.
but it's probably a competitor.
Okay.
And I was very direct with him at City Council and indicated that I'm going to protect my residents, and I'm, not going to basically listen to the information that you're sharing because I don't think that it has the right purpose and you have the right motive for what you're doing here. And so he asked me if I was trying to impugn him, and I said, no, sir, I'm not trying to impugn you. I'm trying to do what I was elected to do and protect the citizens of Maricopa. And so that's just another example of how I have to interface with a businessman, an attorney, a previous attorney general for the state of Arizona, to protect my residents in the way that I think. And again, doing it professionally and doing it correctly.
In this case, it was about hiring practices.
Yeah.
You don't think it's proper for a council member to get involved with a company's or business's hiring practices, do you?
I would not have filed the complaint. I don't feel as though it was something that I don't feel like in Maricopa would purposely do that to endanger the public. In this particular situation, you guys took immediate action, or I felt like it was pretty close to immediate action, and I wasn't even aware of the gentleman who you had hired and his background issues, but I felt like you took really good care of it and handled the situation and were startled yourself, not you particularly, but in
Sure.
Maricopa. So I don't feel like it was a violation, but I guess I don't, and the report specifically talks about not taking away the amendment right for a council member to express their opinion as well. And so as long as she's professional, she has the right to ask the question. And so would I advise it? No, I don't advise it. I honestly feel, and I said that night, people should pick up the phone, call me, talk to me about it. Ask to have coffee. Go talk about it having coffee. I have found during my campaigns, during very challenging times while on city council, that if you pick up the phone, if you invite someone to have coffee, it is very, very hard not to come to a peaceful resolution by meeting one-on-one. And so that's what I highly recommend. In this case, I would have recommended that. And even though you might not be on great terms, I still recommend it because it's the best way to handle and resolve a situation.
Okay. One more quick question and we'll move on.
All right.
Now, this is not, I'm not assuming what council will do in relation to the
Upcoming ethics?
ethics code in the future.
Okay.
But if ethics complaints are going forward, are off limits to third parties, how can constituents keep council members accountable?
Yeah, I think that there are a couple ways. I think you can always, again, call that council member and face them face to face. You can also invoke another council member to hold a meeting with that other council member. Because you're looking for resolution, right? You're not necessarily looking to punish, you're looking for resolution. And you want an element of what they're doing to be fixed or resolved. So I think that should be the first thing, is meeting with them one-on-one. If it goes beyond that, I think that you have options such as writing editorials in Maricopa, in other news media. You can write editorials and allow for a response from that council member. You also have your vote. You can choose to vote for a different person when the election comes up. So for the code that exists right now, I feel like those options are available. And in the future, we'll see where the city council goes in allowing third party.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's see. We have a reader asking, what has been your biggest success while on city council?
Oh, my biggest success. Okay. I think that I'll take that personally somewhat, and then city council wide. So personally, I've had a great opportunity as vice mayor. It was, to me, the perfect year to be the vice mayor for the city of Maricopa. Because of why? Because of COVID-19. I know that sounds really weird, but basically the residents were sending in texts, sending in emails, calling us, basically saying, how are you going to take care of the vulnerable? How are you going to take care of the seniors within the city? And so the mayor called me and said, hey, will you take all these questions? And I'm like, sure, why not? And he also asked one of our senior advocates to set up a volunteer meeting, Joan Kozar. And Joan set up the volunteer meeting, and 50 people attended. And from there, we created Copa Cares 2020. And so Copa Cares, basically, the structure is that we use the existing food bank and the telephone line there. Right. And you can call and you can ask questions about, how can I get my medicine delivered to my home for free? How can I get food delivered to my home for free? How do I get a food box if I've lost my job? How do youth still get the food? I mean, there's a plethora of questions that can be answered by calling the telephone line. And so one of my biggest enjoyments this year and successes was Copa Cares 2020, and how we've made it such a success and met the needs of the community during such a vital period of time. Council-wise, I would say our success was definitely, and this is over the years, over the 10, 15 years, 347 overpass. I mean, can any of us even imagine at this point life without the overpass? It's pretty amazing, but it was quite a success, and really a story from the history books that will stay for a long time. An element of that I'm really proud of, that very few people know, is that when they came to a town hall for the 347 overpass, they laid out the elements, the different paths that they had, the different routes that they would use to create the overpass. And the path that they liked the most was going to destroy the Baptist church. So the Baptist church called me and said, "Is there anything I can do about this?" And I said, "Why, yes, come to the town hall, and I'll come to the town hall, and we'll both fight together to save the Baptist church." So in looking at the path that they had decided, I basically kind of this is coming from my program management days, I basically took the road and flipped it over to the east side of the church rather than the west side of the church, or through the church, and went before town hall and gave them my map and said, "Here's a perfect solution for how you would use your route for the overpass and miss the church and save part of our history." And at the time, I didn't realize that not only does it save the money by not destroying the church, it saved money because it moved the path off of the main 347 as it existed. And so they constructed the majority of 347 without interfering with the traffic on 347.
Wow.
And it all came from an idea of flipping the road to the east side of the church and saving the church, and then creating your road off the road. So, I don't take credit for all of that, but I do take credit for the different idea on the map and flipping it and saving the church. And yeah. So I think that's one of my biggest successes too.
Can I flip that question on its head a little bit and ask you if you could have one vote back from your time on council?
Yeah.
What would it be?
One vote back. Oh my gosh. Boy, I didn't anticipate that question. One vote back. Obviously, it's not anything super important because it would come to mind, and I would have thought about it and pondered it. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect in my decisions, so I don't want to say that. But if you don't mind, I'd like to take time and think about that.
Sure.
And if I come up with an answer that I think would be really interesting to folks, I don't mind answering it on the post.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you do anything differently if you were mayor? Would you run things differently?
I think
you're close. You're the vice mayor. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's not.
Yeah. No. In fact, he went on vacation last week, and for 5 days I was the mayor.
There you go.
But nothing happened. So.
You didn't do anything differently.
Darn. No. So the mayor is awesome, and he has such great relationships, such great networking. He does a phenomenal job at that. I think if I were to change anything, and the mayor knows this, so I'm not even, speaking behind his back. If I were to change anything from a council member's perspective, it would be I would communicate more to my council members. I mean, he does a decent job, but I have spoke to him. I would love to have a monthly meeting with him to pick his brain. He gets the opportunity to attend a lot of different things, and I have an unending appetite for information. I'm a very curious person, and so I would change that aspect of him in terms of communicating with his council.
A higher level of communication, more.
More communication. So I've shared with him. I said, I know that you're a busy man, and I understand. And over the 6 years, I have gotten accustomed to it. So if there's something I really, really want to know about something that he's done, I'll just contact him and ask him the questions. And he's very willing to give me the information. But again, I say he's very busy, but I would like to have a one-on-one with him every month so that I can kind of pick his brain.
Cool.
Yeah.
Stacy, a reader, is hoping to get some inside information on maybe some new restaurants that are coming to Maricopa that are not fast food.
Yeah.
Anything you can tell us?
No, nothing I can share. But there are some on the horizon in regards to the current developments that you see happening around us.
Right.
And I know one or two of them will be sit down, and they'll be unique too. That's what I'm excited about. So That's all I can really say.
Right.
Sorry about that.
That's fine. You have said in the past one of the keys to a promising future in Maricopa is acquiring high-paying jobs.
Yes.
To the city here.
Yes.
What is the city doing to do that now?
Yes.
To get those jobs here, and what else can be done in the future?
Yeah. So right now, the exciting part is that the Australia Gin is happening behind Culver's. If you're not familiar with that area, there's a whole section back there, back by where the fire department and fire admin building currently is. And so that's called the Australia Gin, and we have a contract with a developer who's going to be putting up buildings, and they call it flex space. And in this flex space, you have the ability to make the size of the room larger, smaller, according to your business. And so what we're hoping for there is a variety of different types of businesses, but those that we are targeting are things like financial institutions that bring some of their finance administration here, so higher paying jobs there. Professional jobs like that take a little more room than what we currently have in any of our spaces, plus a little more affordable as well, so that a business would be enticed to come and put their facility there. So we're looking for professional organizations like that to bring high paying jobs. It might also include some light industrial, and I just use this example because it's used quite often. Light industrial might be someone who makes doorknobs, but the skills that it takes to create those doorknobs is something that might require a higher paying job as well. Similar to machinist, or I don't know. I don't live in that world, I guess, but higher paying jobs along that avenue. What can be done in the future is that currently there's an area that developers are working hard to pull out of the floodplain. So we have to pull some of our area out of the floodplain so that we can entice businesses that have higher paying jobs to come to the city of Maricopa. A funny story, just so I could, if you don't mind if I share. So when I was working for General Dynamics, and I was going to apply or actually turn in my paperwork to become a city council member, I actually had to go in front of an ethics committee at General Dynamics. Yeah, wow. They said, because I had to inform them that I was taking on potentially a second job, and I had to go in front of an ethics committee. And one of their questions was, well, what are you going to do if General Dynamics decides to come to Maricopa? And I said, I'll resign from General Dynamics because I want to vote for General Dynamics to come to Maricopa. So I'm big on trying to bring big businesses like that. Now that's General Dynamics is probably out of the question for us for another 10 years or so. Right. But we can be working on the infrastructure to help that happen in the future.
Okay, great. Let me ask you about the school, the new high school.
Yeah.
There's talk of building,
yes.
Obviously, the first phase of a new high school in the eastern
yes.
part of town.
Yes.
On a bare bones budget.
Yes.
And from what I understand, reports say that it would include an uncovered outdoor dining.
I just read that last night.
Dining area, and it would lack things like a security system, smart boards, TVs. Let me ask you just directly: would you support a bond issue or an override to build a high school with more amenities for the students?
Boy, those are two hard questions. And again, as I think it was noted in the article that we read, that a lot of people were upset with the last bond issue because it wasn't specific enough. And they wanted more information, more detail, better planning. And so I think it requires a lot more planning, a lot more details. And so it was definitely something that I would have to look at in terms of whether or not I would support it. Now, I do not support the idea that students would have to go to a building such as what they're describing. That doesn't sound positive at all. And I'm actually wondering, and I've asked this question in the past, with the money that you're receiving, could you help alleviate some of the crowdiness in the current high school by building a specialized school? Why does it have to be a full-out normal school? It could be a specialized school that is smaller and that allows you, with the money, to build a better facility. So that specialized school could be some of their educational systems, and I'm just going to throw this out, such as the culinary could locate there, or the technology, or there are specialized sectors where you can build. I think you could build a smaller building with the money and have it be more purposeful and better, more comfortable for the students, and something that they would be proud to attend if that's an area in which they would like to excel. And I think technology is like perfect for it. But I don't have the details. I don't know what that would take, but it could be a smaller building, a starter building, and then you could grow from there out and in the future. But I think it would help to alleviate some of the crowding.
Okay, let me ask you another question from our Facebook Live.
Yes.
Kathy asks, do you have a long-range dream for Maricopa that you hope to start while mayor?
That's funny. Right now, at this point, I don't anticipate running for mayor. Kathy, and I probably know who Kathy is, and she always teases me about that. And she knows my answer to that. But my long-range goals is definitely focused on the elements of my foundation of my campaign, really. It's the transportation in and out of Maricopa. It is the economic development, and high-paying jobs is hugely important to me. So those are the elements that I would like to focus on. And then, a little bit less important, but still important, is the arts and that element of it as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Two more issue-related questions. The 347.
Yes.
Obviously a huge issue in the
Yes.
city. Too many fatal crashes, too much
Yes.
congestion,
Yes.
long-term problem.
Yep.
What have you been doing as an incumbent member of council
Yes.
to kind of address that situation? And are you satisfied with the progress the council has made to come up with a fix?
Yeah. So let me talk about that a little bit. In case you're interested, I posted a video out there about the basics, because a lot of people don't understand the basics of 347. And when I say basics, I mean, first of all, people think that nothing is actually happening right now. And there is a study currently underway that will help us understand, and I'm just going to throw this out as a silly idea, but is it roundabouts, on 347? Is it more stoplights? Is it an overpass? Is it more lanes? What are the options, and what are the best options to keep the traffic moving at a safer level, at a little bit regular level? So what are those best options? And the results of that study is supposed to be due out by the end of the summer. I'm hoping that we get to see that information and hear that information soon. I believe COVID-19 kind of slowed that whole process down. So something is happening. That's basic element number one. Basic element number two is that there are lots of partnerships currently happening. Because you have to understand that 347 is owned by ADOT, but it's actually in two counties. It's in Maricopa County, it's in Pinal County. And so we have to work together with those two counties. And Proposition 416 and 17 money can only be used on the Pinal County side of 347. So we can't actually handle the overpass or whatever it is at Riggs Road that needs to happen. That actually has to happen on the Maricopa side. However, we can all work together as partners to make sure that we're following the same solution and we have an understanding of the timeline and when it's going to happen. So the partnerships are important. It's important with Gila River. It's important with ADOT. It's important with MAG. You get it. It's important with a lot of partners. And those partnerships are definitely part of the networking that's currently underway and happening. So things are happening from those two aspects. And then third, you have the money, or a portion of the money, right? So Prop 416 and 417 are props that were passed by the voters to provide for money for a variety of different road projects within the Pinal County. And one that's priority one is the 347. And so there are some funds, a significant amount of funds that are allocated to that project. But the problem is it was challenged by someone in Casa Grande, a gentleman in Casa Grande, and so Goldwater Institute picked it up. And it's been through the court systems, been appealed. Pinal County won their appeal, and then basically the Goldwater Institute says, well, we're taking it to the Arizona Supreme Court, so it's currently in the Arizona Supreme Court, and you can't do anything with those funds until this is decided. And so that's basic number three, is you have to understand that element of it. The funds aren't available to even do anything further. In fact, the study is being done on money that was given to Pinal County from MAG, from Pinal County, from the city of Maricopa, and from, I want to say Maricopa County, but I'm not positive that they're part of the study. But the funds are being taken from those general fund budgets to get things going so that we're not sitting around
Right.
waiting. So I think that's important for people to understand. There are things happening. You can't see it, but there are things happening. And I've talked with Pinal County, and they indicate that once it gets out of Goldwater Institute, they're ready to jump on it. They understand that they have a pre-plan ready in terms of all of the road projects within Pinal County that are in phase 1 or priority 1 of the RTA, the Prop 416 and 417. And they're ready to jump on it and actually put their final detail and reincorporate their committee, citizen committee,
Okay.
to help with that information. So there are things that are happening. What I've personally done is I've made sure that any opportunity to get in front of people and talk about this and help them understand what is happening and what can be done in the future, establishing those same relationships, those same networks that our partners are doing. I go to Washington, D.C. to make sure I meet with our representatives and our senators, and last time we did that was in January, and they are fully aware of our top 3 priorities, which is 347, I-11, and the floodplain. They are fully prepared that when the time is right, that they will be there to support us for more and additional funding. So things are happening, and that's how I'm helping to contribute to that.
We all hope that there's a future solution.
Yes.
347 that
Yes.
addresses all those. Is there anything that can be done now? I mean, it's a dangerous roadway.
Yeah.
I think you would admit that.
Yeah.
Is there anything that can be done now to lessen the danger of that roadway?
Yeah. So
without a bigger solution?
Right. So whenever I see things that are happening on 347, people that are passing at high speeds, people that are passing in the median, drives me nuts. I'm like, what are you people crazy? And then we all end up at the stoplight at the same time. It just makes me laugh. But I'm on our chief and I'm on our mayor and our city manager to work with 347, to work with DPS, to work with Gila River, to make sure that whenever they can patrol that, I don't know if you've noticed, but it definitely slows down significantly. And then recently, someone has suggested, what about putting up a billboard? Now, I don't have the expertise to know if a billboard works, but I know it's affordable, so why not put up a billboard that's easy to read while you're driving and it makes you think. Talk about how many crashes, how many traffic, how many deaths, makes you think. So I think it's worth considering that as well.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier, just a minute ago, the floodplain.
Yes.
Can you give us an update on what the city's doing to get more land out of the floodplain? Obviously, that will impact how the city develops in the future
Yes.
and whether or not it can sustain growth.
Yes.
Can you give us an update on what's being done and frankly, is there enough being done to get that done?
Yeah. Well, so solving the floodplain problem is definitely an expensive project that has to happen. And what you would see if you did any of the research on the floodplain within Maricopa, you'd find that there are 2 parallel things happening. One is with the Corps of Engineering, which while we were in Washington, D.C., we stopped off to see the Corps of Engineering, making sure that their study process is on its way. And, the study process itself is amazing to me. It takes 3 years for the Corps of Engineering.
Wow.
I know. We all want that to be a little faster. I know working at Motorola and General Dynamics, things were expected to be done much faster than stuff like that. So I'm a little bit of a Nancy person too, and I want a little bit faster, but that's part of their process. But they are on schedule in regards to understanding what their study is going to show, and we want it to show that the city of Maricopa would benefit from a solution to the floodplain issue. And then the second part of that is that our city manager is currently working with developers that are surrounding a major floodplain area, and the developers together and the city manager with the city staff are coming up with solutions that they expect within this year to 2020 that we would have an understanding of what we could proceed with.
Okay.
And how long that would take and how much money it would take and how would that money be established. And part of it's going to be coming from the developers. And so, yeah, we like that the developers want to invest in the city of Maricopa. And so that could bring a significant amount of land out of the floodplain.
Okay.
So that's going to happen faster than the Corps of Engineering solution.
Okay. I just have one more question, but before
Yeah.
we do that, Patty Coutre, who's a
Yeah.
member of the school board, is clarifying that the money received from the state
Yeah.
requires the district to build what was proposed. So at this point, they would not allow
A specialized
school.
Darn.
Okay,
Darn.
so I just wanted to.
Okay, because last
and
time
thank you to Patty for.
yeah,
for,
thank you, Patty. So last time I talked with the superintendent, you know, she wanted to consider that idea. So now at least I understand
Yeah.
why
And,
that idea wasn't considered. Yeah, I like that. So thank you.
and she allows that, or she explains that they can't use the money to enhance an existing school as well.
Sure,
So
sure, that makes
which
sense.
goes hand
I
in
did
hand.
know that part, but I didn't know the specialized part. That's
Yeah.
really good information to have. Thank
so,
you.
So thank you to Patty
Yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah. Thanks, Patty.
One final question
Yes.
before we let you go.
Yeah.
Trump or Biden?
Well, Trump.
Trump. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
care to elaborate on that choice?
No, I definitely don't want to offend anyone. I
Okay.
just believe that, you know, aside from all the COVID information, aside from his personal attributes, his, you know, his willingness to talk so much and tweet so much, those are things that I don't like. And but I do like the direction that I think the country has taken prior to COVID-19, and I think it's positive. And I think that that's more likely than with the other choice that I might have.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We thank our readers for their
Yeah,
questions
thank you
today.
very
And
much. I
we thank
appreciate
you,
it.
Nancy Smith, for your time today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Being willing to address the voters today.
Yeah. So go ahead and say a final word.
Thank you. Sure.
Okay. Oh, okay. I
No,
wasn't
you go.
sure. Yeah. So thank you very much for coming and listening to what I might have to say. If you have any additional questions, I'd definitely be interested in what those questions are and willing to answer them. And I'll take a look at the post and see if there's any questions that we weren't able to answer. And my door is always open, and I'll have that coffee with you. I love to have the coffee with you, sit down and talk about your concerns, and willing to talk about the hard topics. I think it's important. And we will leave coffee with an understanding we may not agree. We'll have to agree to disagree sometimes. But I enjoy getting to know people. So let's go have coffee. Thanks.
Thank you, Nancy.
You're welcome.